I've got to tell you, I've been looking forward to having this conversation for the last 2 or so days. But as things turn out with live broadcasting in news, where there's suddenly a breaking story, someone does something they shouldn't have done, and we throw out the plans, and we end up not covering what we would have wanted to cover. Now, Finance Minister, the German Finance Minister, Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats have emerged victorious in the German elections. Well, we take a walk down memory lane to look at the legacy of the outgoing German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She was at the helm of Europe's largest economy for almost 16 years. To discuss this, I'm joined now by Dr. Christopher Schmidt in Pretoria. He's the spokesperson for the German embassy. Thank you for talking to me, sir. So let's start with, why is it that you Germans don't seem to want to give any political party an outright majority? It seems to me, while here in South Africa we're talking about coalition politics as a new thing, a new trend, you in Germany have had it for years. I mean, the SDP, we are saying they've emerged victorious. We are talking here about a party that got 25%, 25.7%, as opposed to the CDU's 24.1%. What's up with that?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you for having me on your show. In Germany, how the system works and everything, we're quite used to having coalition governments. I think over the decades since since the Second World War, really, we only had one situation where one single party was able to form a government on its own without a coalition partner. So we're very used to it, and it's nothing to be concerned about for us.
Sure. So let's talk then, before we talk about the possibilities going forward, let's focus on Angela Merkel. 16 years at the helm as Chancellor. Would you say that she was a bridge builder? Because part of the story, of course, is that she was the first chancellor to have come from the former East Germany, but also has had to form a number of coalitions, as well as be at the helm during moments of crisis in the country.
You're right. I mean, 16 years is an incredibly long time. And when Chancellor Merkel took office, I mean, just as a random example, in 2005, the iPhone had not yet been invented. So imagine how much the world has changed since then. And Angela Merkel has been the face of Germany for such a long time internationally. So it's a small wonder that she kind of had a great influence on how the country developed in those last 16 years. She was the first woman to become chancellor, and as you said, she was the first person from the former Eastern Germany to become chancellor. So within her biography, there are many reasons why she became the bridge builder that she actually became. And as you said, she didn't have an easy job during those years. We had the financial crisis in 2008. We had the migration crisis in 2016. So for Europe, these years have also been quite difficult. But the Chancellor, I think, always did a good job of steering a clear course and having a steady ship at all times. So yeah, I think her legacy is great, and the footsteps that need to be filled now are quite big.
Speaking of filling those shoes that need to be filled now, there's a name that's doing the rounds, Olaf Scholz. And in the nature of how you do things in Germany, this is not someone who will be brand new to government, because he has been in a coalition and served in a coalition led by Angela Merkel, despite the fact that they're not from the same party. What are we to read? Is there a shift in terms of preference, political preference and leaning among the German voters, or not really? Will we continue to see more of a centrist approach from Mr. Schulz?
Yes, I think the CDU, the Christian Democrats, and the SPD are the biggest parties in Germany. And the Christian Democrats, they're like center right, and the SPD is the center left. So we're still talking about a politician who's a part of the political center of the political spectrum in Germany. But having said that, he is a social democrat, and he is a pragmatist, and he's been around for a very long time. As you mentioned, he was the vice chancellor under Angela Merkel for the last 4 years, and also the finance minister. And before that, he was the head of the government of the provincial government of the state of Hamburg in Germany. So he's a very experienced politician, nationally and internationally. Yeah, I think you will definitely see a certain shift in politics, but it will be a government that comes from the center of German politics. Of course, that depends very much on how the coalition will look like that Mr. Scholz will be able to form. And the talks about that have only just begun.
Lastly, Dr. Schmidt, let me ask you about what kind of a world the next chancellor inherits and Europe's place therein, with Brexit having happened, the United States looking elsewhere for, new pathways towards collaboration. Recently, the launch of AUKUS, Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States had France peeved for a moment there that they were not involved in those. Where does Germany find its place within that changing world?
Well, Germany is one of the most important countries in the European Union. We're certainly, our economy is the largest in the European Union, and we have some political influence there. So we always would look where we stand within the European Union and try to contribute to international politics in cooperation with our partners in the European Union. And that will obviously be a big priority for the new Chancellor to contribute to international politics in cooperation with other European partners. And as that, we always put a very important focus on doing things together with our international partners multilaterally, because we are of the opinion and of the firm opinion that the problems that we are facing, climate change, migration, questions of peace and war, they can only be solved internationally together with everybody on board. So I think that will be where we would be headed in the next 4 years as well.
Do you believe it will be difficult to find enough consensus among the political parties? Because 25% is really not a lot. Will it be easy for Mr. Scholz to cobble together a coalition, or could it be that actually the CDU ends up being the one that negotiates better with other parties and again ends up forming a government?
It's difficult to predict, I have to admit, because in Germany we have been used to two-party coalitions. So now the numbers, as they turned out in the elections, have necessitated a three-party coalition. So obviously it will be a lot more difficult to form a three-party coalition than reaching consensus between two parties. But over the last few years, we have seen so-called grand coalitions between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats, where the left and the right had to come together. And I think if they have managed to come together, it will also be possible for three parties. At the moment, the most likely thing to happen is probably that the SPD, the Social Democrats, the Greens, and the FDP, the Liberal Democrats, might form a coalition. And especially between the Green Party and the Liberal Democrats, there are certain policy issues that are difficult to bridge, where they can, or they will be able to, or where they will have to form difficult decisions and in order to come together. But I think it's certainly doable. But as we've seen after the last elections, where it took quite a long time to form a government, it's not an easy feat. But I think everybody has learned from that experience, and everybody's very willing to find a compromise and to reach consensus to form a coalition.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights and indulgence there, Dr. Christopher Schmidt, who is the spokesperson of the German embassy in South Africa, just helping us understand the legacy of Angela Merkel.